I was gone for just 3 months. That's all. It's 3 months to help my brother recover after his stroke, 3 months of hospital runs, sponge baths, and sleepless nights, only to come back and find a for sale sign where my lake cabin used to be. Not just for sale. Already sold, bought boxed up, and bulldozed into someone else's idea of luxury living. This wasn't just property, it was my grandfather's cabin, my father's haven. It was where I spent summers learning to fish, build fires, and patch a leaky roof with duct tape and prayer. It was home. And now a stranger stood inside it, holding a sandwich, telling me I didn't belong. The swing on the porch was gone. The old rocking chair Dad repaired twice was ash in a barrel, and the stranger had the gall to tell me this place was legally purchased through the HOA. You're trespassing. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, numb. I felt like I had stepped into a parallel reality, one where the law bent toward people with clipboards and board meetings. It's not blood and memories. That's when I heard the familiar crunch of gravel behind me. I turned Karen. There she was, clipboard in hand, striding toward me like she was on a runway. Her smug smirk hit me before her words did. Sir, I've already called the police. You're not allowed to harass new residents. HOA code clearly prohibits unauthorized visits to transitioned properties. I stared at her, then at the cabin, then back at her. You sold my land. Karen didn't flinch. Abandoned properties fall under HOA discretionary jurisdiction. You were gone for 90 days. That's abandonment under our bylaws. It was like watching someone rob your house while reciting the rule book. I didn't even know what to say. I pulled out my wallet, showed her my ID, then pulled out the deed. This is my land. I've got it right here. She rolled her eyes. You'll have to take that up in court. We followed the process. The board voted unanimously. Who's on the board? I asked. Karen's lips curled. It's confidential. Of course it was. When the police came, I was still standing there, holding the paper. It's like maybe if I clutched it hard enough, it would rewrite reality. One officer was kind. He looked through everything and nodded slowly. This is definitely strange, he said, but HOA disputes are civil. You'll need a lawyer. I didn't want a lawyer. I wanted to go home. That night I slept in my truck, parked on the side of the gravel path, engine off, staring at a lit window where I used to read under an old lamp with a missing shade. I didn't sleep. I remembered something my dad, a few years back, during a quiet night at the lake, had handed me a sealed envelope. You take care of this place, he'd said. Don't let the HOA worms crawl in. They're sniffing around already. I'd laughed. He didn't. Inside that envelope was the deed, signed notarized and clear. No liens, no back taxes, nothing owed. And yet they took it. Next morning, I went digging, county records, HOA filings, board meeting minutes. What I found made my stomach twist. They had filed a quiet title action, claimed abandonment, said dues hadn't been paid in over a year. Complete lie. I had auto pay on file. Even worse, the board voted on it during a closed session. Not a single notice was sent to me. The vote passed 6-0. 3 of the board members were in real estate. One of them, Karen's cousin, he bought the property for $4,000, $4,000, a cabin appraised at over $200,000, generational land, gone for the price of an old used car. They didn't just steal it, they planned it. That evening, I met with someone I hadn't seen in years. Janet, former HOA treasurer. She'd resigned 2 years ago and moved to another county. She was reluctant to meet, but when I told her what happened, she agreed. We met. At a little cafe, Janet leaned in and whispered, they're flipping the whole lakefront. Karen's husband is on the zoning board. They've already got sketch drafts of condos, rentals, all of it. Your cabin? It was the first domino. They've got 10 more lined up? I felt sick. This wasn't about unpaid dues. This wasn't about 90 days. It was a hostile takeover. They were repackaging our childhoods. For golf courses and weekend tourists, I drove back to the lake and parked again. Same spot. Same ache in my chest. That's when I remembered the acres. 3 acres of land adjacent. To the HOA property that my dad had gifted to me under a small LLC. It was legally a different property, different parcel, different jurisdiction, and it contained something precious. The road. The one and only access road into the HOA neighborhood. They'd paved part of it, but the land it was built on. All mine, so the next morning I towed a horse. Trailer onto it, parked it sideways. Posted signs, private road, access revoked, vehicles subject to towing. I hired 2 off-duty sheriffs to monitor it. 24/7. Karen was there within the hour. You can't do this. This is illegal, she shrieked. Nope, I said. It's just inconvenient. You're blocking families from getting home. You're welcome to walk. Or better yet, bring their case to court, just like you told me. She dialed the sheriff. He came. Looked around, then he smiled. You're within your rights, sir. If they want access, they'll need your written permission, or pay the lease fee. Karen's face drained. What lease fee? She hissed. I smiled back. $100,000 per year. That night I parked by the lake again and cried. I don't cry often. I didn't even cry at my dad's funeral, but I cried for what we lost. I cried for what I had to become to get it back. They took everything, my memories, my legacy, my peace, and now I was playing their game, but I was playing to win. If you've ever watched someone you love lose everything to people who hide behind rules and paperwork, don't just walk away. Stand up, ask questions, dig deeper, because if I hadn't, I'd still be sleeping in my truck watching someone else live my life. Don't go anywhere. What happened next will make you believe in justice again. Karen thought I was done. She had no idea what was coming. Watch till the end, because this story is far from over. The news spread faster than wildfire. Within a day, the HOA's Facebook page was on fire with angry comments and confused residents. Why can't I get into my driveway? Who's this guy claiming road ownership? Is this even legal? Karen was doing what Karen does best, lying through her teeth. This is an act of aggression, she wrote. We're working with the county to resolve it and remove the obstruction. The obstruction she was referring to was my 1986 horse trailer and 2 off-duty sheriffs I paid in cash. It wasn't going anywhere. What she didn't know yet was that I had more than just land. I had receipts. And allies? One of them came in the form of a 74-year-old Vietnam veteran named Thomas Reed. He lived 3 houses down from my old cabin and had been battling the HOA since 2009. His offense? Flying the American flag on a 20-foot pole instead of a regulation 6-foot mount. Thomas knocked on my truck window late that night. I rolled it down, and he said, "You finally showed up." He handed me a manila folder. Inside was a stack of emails, receipts, and memos. I've been documenting them for 13 years. Every shady vote, every closed-door deal, every property taken when someone left town or got sick. You're not the first. But you might be the one who ends it. He pointed to a name I hadn't seen before, Derek Hansen, Karen's husband, head of county zoning committee. A man with stakes in 3 of the LLCs buying up lakefront property. Suddenly it all clicked. Karen wasn't just selling homes. Was handing them over, clearing the lake of the old crowd to make room for condos, Airbnbs, and whatever her investment firm buddies could squeeze in. The theft of my cabin wasn't a mistake. It was a test run. The next morning I went down to the county building and filed a formal injunction. It wouldn't fix everything. It would freeze any new development until the courts could sort out ownership of the road. Karen showed up. 5 hours later, with a county inspector and a clipboard, they said my trailer was creating a public hazard and I needed to remove it or face daily fines. I pulled out a laminated deed, held it up and smiled. This is private land. You want to find someone? Start with yourself for trespassing. Karen turned red, not pink, not flushed. Crimson, she started yelling, "You don't understand who you're messing with. We have backing. We're transforming this area, you. Think you're going to stop progress with an old horse trailer and a sob story?" The sheriff behind me cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." She stomped off, nearly twisted her ankle on the gravel, and yelled back over her shoulder, "This isn't over." No, Karen, it wasn't. But she was about to wish it was. That night, I met with Thomas and 3 other longtime residents. They all had stories eerily similar ones. One had returned from cancer treatment to find her garden ripped up for non-compliance. Another had her mailbox moved 3 feet and fined $600 for it. The last one, his house sold for delinquent dues he never owed. I started building a case. Not just civil, criminal, fraud, collusion, abuse of power, but then the unexpected. At 3:14 a.m., I got a knock on the window. It wasn't Thomas. It was a young man, maybe 26, shaking. His hands trembling so hard he could barely hold the envelope he shoved through the cracked window. I work for Karen's husband. In zoning. I can't be seen talking to you. But they forged your abandonment paperwork, your signature. I'm sorry. He vanished. Before I could even say thank you. Inside the envelope, a copy of a resignation letter, one he never sent, and a scanned form with my name, signature, and date, all falsified. The HOA board had fabricated an abandonment request, one I'd never seen. Signed or agreed to. They'd forged my name to steal my land, and now I had proof. The next morning, I went quiet. No trailer, no drama, just paperwork. I filed with the district attorney. I contacted the state real estate board. I made one more visit this time to a reporter named Callie Simmons from a local paper no one reads unless it storms. Coming or the 4th of July parade gets canceled. She listened. She wrote. She fact-checked, and 2 days later, the headline read, HOA power grab. Cabin owner claims fraud in lakefront land sale. It wasn't a national headline, not even regional, but it was enough to spook Karen, enough to make her retreat, enough for the whispers to begin. She released a statement the next day. All HOA actions are legal, voted upon, and within our rights. Any confusion or perceived wrongdoing is regrettable. Perceived. That word set my chest on fire. They weren't sorry. They were just annoyed someone noticed. A week later, something happened I didn't expect. The man who bought my cabin, the one eating a sandwich when I first knocked, reached out to me. He asked to meet in private. He looked ashamed. Said he had no idea it was stolen. Showed me the listing, the paperwork, everything the HOA gave him. I'm not looking to profit off your pain, he said. If you want it back, I'll sell it at cost. $4,000. I didn't even blink. I wired it that afternoon. The cabin was mine again. But I wasn't satisfied, because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every mailbox moved, every garden uprooted, every flagpole taken down and fine tacked on. So I launched a website, HOAfaxlakeview.com. I uploaded everything, the emails, the scanned signatures, the board meeting recordings Thomas had secretly captured. Every dirty, detailed, and then I did what Karen feared most. I shared it with every property owner in the neighborhood. Anonymous letters. Cur codes. A map. A breakdown of how much money the HOA was spending and where it was actually going. Turns out, $183,000 went to consulting fees. Paid to a company owned by Karen's sister Dash. In Dash law, Karen panicked. She called an emergency board meeting. Residents showed up, nearly 70 of them shouting, demanding answers. Karen stood there, trying to quiet them down, till one woman near the back stood up and yelled, "Is it true you sold off properties to your own family?" Karen didn't deny it. She just The board was dissolved pending investigation. Karen resigned the next day, but she didn't go quietly that night. The cops showed up at my trailer again, this time with a warrant. Karen had accused me of cyber harassment and property extortion. I showed them everything. The receipts, the fake forms, the anonymous tip. The deputy nodded. We figured as much. The DA's office already dismissed the complaint, just had to follow up. Pause at the end. You've caused quite a stir around here, but I think you saved more than your cabin. And then he walked away. I sat by the lake again that night. Alone, the stars were clearer than I'd ever seen them. I pulled out the old envelope from my dad, ran my fingers over the faded ink. He trusted me to protect something more than land. He trusted me to protect a legacy, and I almost lost it because I trusted the system. But systems don't protect people. People protect people. If you're still watching, don't walk away from your fight, because no matter how small the battle looks, someone's counting on you to stand up. What I did next. Let's just say, I wasn't done with the HOA. In fact, I had one final move, and it would hit them right where it hurt. Watch till the end. It's time to flip the whole story. The morning after the board dissolved, it was quiet. Too quiet. No angry emails. No HOA notices taped to doors. Karen. Just a light fog rolling over the lake and the familiar creak of the dock as I stepped onto it, barefoot and tired.
Ed.
My cabin back, but the water didn't feel peaceful. It felt unfinished. I thought about letting it go. Thought about patching up the porch swing, planting wildflowers again, and pretending the last few weeks hadn't happened. But then I saw Thomas's house, still scarred from the time they fined him. $5,000 for replacing his siding without visual board approval. I saw the abandoned house at the top of the hill, overgrown and empty, sold under the same fake abandonment clause they used on me. So no, I wasn't done. Karen had left a power vacuum. The board was dissolved, yes, but the HOA still, technically, existed. It was in limbo, and limbo is where predators breed. I started hearing rumors. A man named Hal from the other side of the lake was reorganizing, hosting secret meetings, handpicking new board members before a public election could even be scheduled. Hal was slick. Worse than Karen. Where Karen was loud and controlling, Hal was quiet and calculating. He smiled in every photo, ran a podcast about neighborhood development, used words like revitalization and investment partners. He wasn't just trying to take over the HOA. He was trying to sell it. I knew what I had to do. I went to the county assessor's office and pulled every plat, every parcel, every forgotten square foot of land inside the HOA boundaries. Turns out, there were more than a few lots in foreclosure. Few had unpaid taxes. Others were owned by people who died years ago with no family to claim them. So, I bought one, then another, then two more. I wasn't buying property. I was buying votes. Each lot came with voting rights, and if Hal wanted to play legal chess, then I was going to beat him at it with the rule book he loved so much. But I needed allies. I reached out to Thomas first, then the woman who lost her garden, then the guy with the moved mailbox. They were hesitant at first, tired, beaten down. But when I showed them the plan, they lit up like bonfires. We pooled money, bought more lots, used shell companies if we had to. It wasn't shady. It was strategy by the time Hal scheduled the revival vote. We had enough power to tilt the board. The meeting was held in the community center. Hal showed up in a blazer and smiled like he already won. He handed out pamphlets with his new mission statement. Let's take our neighborhood into the future. When they asked for nominations for the new board, we raised our hands, calmly, one by one. 5 of us. Veterans, parents, teachers. Me. Hal tried to object. You can't do this. You're not legacy residents. Thomas stood up and said, neither are you. The room erupted. When the votes were counted, Hal was out. We were in. We didn't celebrate. We went to work. First, we opened the books. Every payment. Every fine. Every contractor invoice Karen and her board had pushed through without approval. It was worse than we thought. They spent HOA dues on vacations disguised as conferences, bought furniture for their homes, paid their family members to consult on land use and enforcement strategies. We compiled the data, organized it into a massive report. Then we turned it over to the Attorney General. By the time the investigation was over, Karen was facing charges for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Hal was slapped with a cease and desist. The HOA is legal. Structure was suspended pending litigation. But I wasn't angry anymore, I felt. Clear? A few months later, I got a letter from the man who originally bought my cabin. It's the one who sold it back to me. He wrote, I know I didn't ask the right questions when I bought your place. I was just trying to start over, but seeing everything you've done, how you stood up when the rest of us sat down, I just want to say thank you. You reminded me that some places are worth fighting for. Attached to the letter was a small envelope. Inside, a key. He'd bought another cabin down the shore and included a note saying, "It's yours anytime you need to get away. No HOA, no strings." I didn't realize I was crying until the ink on the note started to blur. That weekend, we had our first real community meeting. Not a board session, not a compliance check, just neighbors gathering at the lake. Kids played, old men fished, someone brought a grill. Thomas stood next to me, holding a soda, eyes glassy. "You know," he said, "you didn't just get your cabin back. You gave this place a soul again." I didn't reply, just looked out. At the lake, the sun was setting, and for the first time in years, no one was measuring grass height or counting fence slats. They were just home. It wasn't long before they retaliated. Not Karen, she was gone. Not Hal. He slithered away the moment the lawsuits started piling up. No, this time it was quieter, less obvious. Came in the form of anonymous calls to the county, emails sent in the middle of the night. Petty, precise complaints that targeted me, Thomas, and anyone else who'd stood with us. The old tactics, codes, violations. Little bureaucratic stabs. I got a letter saying my deck extension violated a wildlife buffer zone regulation. Thomas. Got a notice about an unapproved mailbox again? Another woman got fined $150 for having a pumpkin on her porch outside of seasonal decor timelines? It was exhausting. Not because of the letters themselves, but because of what they meant. The machine wasn't dead. It just changed faces. The HOA, as a legal entity, had been frozen. But that didn't stop the behind-the-scenes players, the developers, the zoning agents, the private equity creeps, from trying to squeeze what they could from the community before the investigations went public. And in the middle of it all, a man showed up. Slick suit. White teeth. Realtor energy. He knocked on my door with a grin and said, "We're offering generous buyouts for lakefront properties. We'd love to make you an offer." I didn't even open the screen door. No. He laughed, like he'd heard that before? You might want to reconsider. The prices are going down fast, especially after all the chaos recently. I leaned forward, looked him right in the eye, and said, "Then go buy a kayak. Because you're not getting an inch of this land unless you swim to it." He left a brochure on the step anyway. It said, "Lakeview Village, a vision for modern living," and at the bottom, a tiny logo. One I recognized, DH Development Group, Derek Hansen, Karen's husband, still moving pieces behind the scenes. Still trying to make money off something he never built, never loved, never respected. They were trying to turn the lake into a gated resort, and my cabin, Thomas's home, every dock and picnic bench, every memory carved into those trees, was standing in the way. So I made a choice. I sold something, not my land, not my soul, but something they never thought I'd part with, the access road. The private strip that led into the HOA neighborhood. The one I had reclaimed with my old horse trailer. The one I had fought over in the courts and won. I sold it to the county. For exactly $1, with a contract clause stating that it would remain a public road forever with no commercial development, no restricted access, and 0 modifications permitted without a community vote. The county agreed. Then I filed a request for a conservation overlay. It's a legal term, one that protects land from aggressive zoning shifts. Within 30 days, it's over 27 acres surrounding the lake, including every tree, every marsh edge, and every wildlife crossing, were placed under environmental conservation. I named it after my dad, the Walter Mayfield Preserved. It wasn't just land anymore. It was legacy. They couldn't touch it. When the developers found out, they were furious. I got letters, threats. One even accused me of sabotaging community growth, but the truth was, the community was growing for the first time in years. Kids rode bikes again, flags flew freely, gardens bloomed without HOA fines looming. People stopped fearing their neighbors, and for the first time, I didn't sleep in my truck or scan the horizon for Karen's clipboard. I just lived. There were still shadows, though. Thomas's health had gotten worse. He'd never admit it, but I saw it in the way he gripped railings now. How his steps got slower, his voice softer. One afternoon, we sat on my dock. He handed me a small wooden box. "Open it," he said. Inside was a key, old and worn. This was my dad's boat shed. "It's yours now. I'm not going to be around forever, and I trust you'll know what to do with it." I didn't know what to say. He just smiled. "You fought for this place. I'll owe you." Even the ones who stayed silent. I wanted to believe that, but part of me still carried the weight not just of what was taken, but what I had to become to take it back. A week later, I got another visit, this time from the sheriff. He handed me a thick envelope. Inside were dozens of printed statements. Turns out, after the news coverage, people from across the state started coming forward. Other HOAs, other communities, same patterns, same names. One woman had her grandmother's home bulldozed while she was in the hospital. Another man was evicted because his son left a bike on the front lawn too long. The stories were endless. I knew mine wasn't unique, but now it wasn't just a story. It was a warning, a map, a spotlight on something dark that had lived in the corners of neighborhoods for decades, and now people were seeing it, one by one. I still walk the lake most mornings. The air smells different now, not better, it's just real. Some days, I sit by my porch and carve. It's quiet work, slow. Honest. I carved a sign recently, hung it over the cabin's door. It says, "Not for sale, ever." And right below that, I added something my dad used to say, "Some things aren't worth money. They're worth everything else." I still get offers, emails, letters from developers. One sent me a check, $2.3 million. Just for the land. I mailed it back. With a sticky note attached, it said, "Try again when your heart's not hollow." No, one tried again after that. Not because they gave up, but because they finally understood something they couldn't measure in square feet or ROI. This land wasn't theirs to take. And I wasn't just one man with a grudge. I was a reminder that even when they come with contracts and codes, even when they push you to the edge, steal your memories, laugh in your face, and call it progress, you can fight back, you can win. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can save a whole community while you're at it.